Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. My name is Ayanda Mbata, and I am the Relationship Manager at Turn Left Media. As many of you know, Turn Left Media are the exclusive marketing solutions partners for LinkedIn in Sub-Saharan Africa. And as you know, we've played very heavily in the marketing solutions space over the years. However, many of you are probably aware of our latest offering around talent solutions that we've added to our suite of services. As we've really seen this great need of employer branding, it's really great importance. We thought it was really important to host this conversation alongside our sister company, The Social Craft, to really delve a little bit deeper into this topic of employer branding in the digital age. Joining us today are some industry experts from Digi Outsource, OfferZone, Old Mutual, as well as our very own partners at LinkedIn. We're looking forward to discussing some really interesting topics and conversations around strategies for brand, not only from a digital perspective, but also from content strategies, just to really understand how we can help you build your pipeline of critical skills in the talent sphere within the business. Today, just before I hand over to my wonderful colleagues, I'd like to just cover some housekeeping rules. Should you want to engage with us, ask us any questions, if you have any comments, please feel free to make use of the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. Now, today I'm going to hand over to you to Samantha Coombe, who is the founder and director of our sister company, The Social Craft. Alongside her will be Jenny Skews, who is the enterprise account manager at LinkedIn. Ladies, without further ado, I'd love to hand the mic over to you.
Thank you so much. As Ayanda mentioned, my name is Jenny Skews, and I'm an enterprise account director at LinkedIn. I work with some of the biggest companies in South Africa, partnering and advising them on building data-driven talent strategies, leveraging LinkedIn to hire great talent directly, and also develop and engage their employees. I'm broadcasting to you live from my living room in Dublin, Ireland.
Thanks so much for the intro, Jen. Good morning, South Africa. It's so lovely to be here. I too joined Jenny in Europe this morning. We're broadcasting live from Amsterdam. So good morning, everybody. It's so great to have you all with us. And I suppose just to reiterate my position, I'm the founder of The Social Craft. I really work in between Turn Left Media and LinkedIn to bring to life compelling employer brand strategies that win. So really excited to kind of take you through our agenda today, which consists of looking into the digital era. So what is it? Who are these individuals and how do we effectively engage them? Why employer branding then is so crucial for this talent group, especially as we move into more of the fourth industrial revolution and more of our world is accelerated through digital. We're then going to look at choosing a channel and which and why are the best channels to be activating your employer brand in. And then lastly, building your strategy and turning that into action. So that being said, we're going to start today with having a look, I suppose, at the talent market. As we know, the world has been completely disrupted. Not only are we living in the fourth industrial revolution and have been for a while, but COVID and a worldwide pandemic has accelerated the way we do business, the way we engage our customers, and the way we communicate in a day-to-day fashion and carry out our day-to-day lives. Businesses, more than ever, are desperate to find those skills, to attract them to their businesses so they can keep up with the new age consumer, investor, and employee. Globally, we see the demand far outweigh the supply. The fancy graph on the left tells us exactly the story. Only the pressure will consistently get greater to produce the skills we need for our business continuity and relevance into the 21st century. If we think about this generation, and by this generation I mean millennials, who are largely taking up most of the labor market at 27% this year, if we think about the way they engage with traditional media and services like radio, TV, communication, and even dating to a certain extent, we're re-engineering traditional functions to suit them. For example, Netflix. Personally, when I was a bit younger, 12 or 10 years ago, I would actually go to the DVD store on a Friday night, pick out my movie. I'd have to return it by the next day, possibly pick up my steers on the way home. But really, now I have access onto a platform, or an app rather, that really disrupts and cuts out the traditional TVC advertisers. If we think about Spotify, we're all very familiar with radio, right? Something that was really topical and key to a lot of our advertising for a long time in South Africa. That has completely disrupted. Spotify has allowed our generation to disrupt radio, removing adverts, streamlining content, and tailoring it based on hyper-personalization. If we think about Facebook and the marketplace that it presents to us, ultimately, when I thought about going to choose my outfit for a big weekend, perhaps I'd rush off to the pavilion, being a Durban girl, head to Woolworths, Edgar's, even YDE, and find my outfit. Now, with a click of a button, without me even leaving my home, I can have an outfit delivered on something like Facebook Marketplace. And then if we think about, I suppose, the last one that's really kind of disrupted the way that we engage as humans, even Tinder to a certain extent has really created a space for us to find our partners based on algorithms instead of waiting for good old destiny to connect us. So that being said, if we think about the way that we're engaging this digital era, mostly millennials in the market, the way we do this needs to change. If we put our millennial hat on, do we feel the traditional window display is getting us the results we want, never mind the quality of applicants? Is it really enough to place our vacancies on job boards and think the best Java developer at a really established organization is going to jump out of their chair and flock to your company? Unfortunately, the answer is no. This is an era of brand where so many services are constantly competing, making them commodities. So how do you turn your business into a brand? We still find ourselves in a world where recruitment marketing thrives and employer branding is still on the rise. The fundamental difference between the two, recruitment marketing is a reactive, short-term fix, whereas employer branding is really a proactive, data-driven, long-term strategy. And why has this become so important? Never mind attracting the right candidates. Traditional tools are not working. Candidates are frustrated. If when I make a purchase on Takealot in order to do my shopping or Woolworths, it doesn't give me a 5-page subscription form or really application form to process that order. So why does this take so long when we think about our candidate journey? So really, why is it not as seamless as any other digital tools and services? This may still be working, right, for your more traditional general talent pools, but one group this isn't going to cut it with anymore is our millennials. Digital and tech skills who are looking for faster access to information, more communication and feedback with hyper-personalization, with the access that we as businesses and brands have on data around our consumers and employees. They expect the hyper-personalization to be really key in your strategy. So where does this leave us? In my mind, with a huge opportunity to pivot and to do things differently. If we think about the opportunities we have, if we start to be aware of this disruption or acceleration, just depending on how you personally view it, this means we need to think about how and where we are engaging this generation. It's certainly not through necessarily a job board, a radio advert, a press release on a national broadcasting station. We need to think differently. We need to be agile, and we need to ultimately lean on the platforms and engagement tools that make sense to this audience. Often we think as brands, what is our route to market? But we need to understand our candidate in order to flip this on its head and meet them in the marketplace. As we can see, there are so many channels that are working to engage talent. But one we're actually going to double click on today is LinkedIn and the power the platform does to inform data-driven decisions and connect to the professional and talent audiences that are critical to our business and our continuity. Over to you, Jen.
Thank you, Sam. So I'd like to encourage you to take a minute to think about how decisions are made. People do not make a decision to move jobs immediately, and then within a few days, they suddenly change jobs. There's multiple touch points that candidates are exposed to that influence a candidate's decision along that whole journey. And we know that our members are coming onto LinkedIn for a variety of reasons that are not always directly related to searching for jobs. For example, people are logging onto LinkedIn to read the news or to connect with an old schoolmate or a colleague. They log on to LinkedIn to access learning content through LinkedIn Learning. And each of these moments is really an opportunity to be present and to educate candidates about our organizations. Let me ask you a quick question, and I'll ask you to put your guesses in the chat. How many months on average before changing jobs do you think a candidate first engages with the company brand? Let's see some guesses in the chat. How many months on average before changing jobs do you think a candidate first engages with the company's brand? The answer to this question is, in fact, 8.5 months. Take a minute to absorb that. If you want to hire a developer with a start date of next week, you need to have started communicating with that developer in December 2020. And then another question, how many touch points do you think the average person experiences with the company's brand before they change their profile to working at that organization? Take a minute to ask yourself, how many touch points do you think that is? Any guesses? Number of touch points with the company before changing your profile. The answer is, in fact, 34. Take a minute to ask yourself if you are putting your brand in front of candidates 34 times during their journey. And this is only on LinkedIn. Remember, candidates are visiting other platforms. They're using many, many other resources to learn about your company too. So what's the opportunity then? The opportunity then is to leverage the professional data on LinkedIn to engage with specific LinkedIn members at the moments that matter. The power of LinkedIn is rooted in the phenomenal global real-time data that our members and companies share with us. Globally, 600 new data points are created every 2 seconds. That's 600 data points right now. That's another 600. As an organization, we exist with the mission of creating economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And we believe that we will achieve this through the creation of what we call the economic graph. And the economic graph is the digital representation of the global workforce, which is in turn a representation of the labor market and talent trends that we're witnessing globally. Globally, we're bringing together over 740 million members and over 57 million companies in an open digital marketplace where people and companies can have meaningful, professional engagements. And this rich ecosystem of data extends across Africa too, where our member numbers are continuing to grow at a rapid pace, and where the opportunities for companies and people to come together on the platform also continue to grow. We have over 42 million members on that platform in Africa, including over 2 million C-suite. I can't think of a single other place on the continent, real or digital, where so many Africans are gathered together to engage with each other as professionals. So why is the LinkedIn data unique? Well, the first time a member logs onto LinkedIn and creates a profile, they share a great deal of professional data with us. And this is really what makes the LinkedIn data unique and differentiates us as a platform from other platforms. So if I think about my own Instagram profile, my own Facebook profile for a minute, the things that you'd learn about me from looking at those platforms are that I love the outdoors, I enjoy running, I'm obsessed with food, but you won't learn that much about me as a professional. And contrasting that, when you create a profile on LinkedIn, or when one of our members creates a profile on LinkedIn, they share a great deal of professional data with us. They share the schools that they've attended. They share what they studied at those schools. They share the skills that they have. They share the companies that they've worked with, their work experience, the different positions that they held at those companies. And then they start navigating around the site, and they start engaging with content, liking articles, following influencers, following companies, following hashtags, creating their own content. And when they're doing this, they're sharing a lot of information with us about their intentions. Are they job seeking? Are they trying to learn more about different companies? Are they looking to learn something new? Are they happy within their own organizations? And similarly, when companies create profiles on LinkedIn, we learn a great deal about them. We learn the industries that they're in. We learn the type of people they're hiring. And as the people at those companies update the skills on their own LinkedIn profiles, we can learn what the fastest growing skills in those companies are, or where talent is moving to. And all of this data can be leveraged to build data-driven strategies and engage with our members to a variety of different ends.
Thanks, Jen. So talking about engaging members to a variety of different ends, I suppose we've heard from Jen Lee why the LinkedIn platform is so powerful in your employer branding play, but really to understand how to now develop a compelling brand strategy, we must understand the way the members exist on the platform. So really, if we think about the opportunity with 770 million members globally, and then double clicking into Africa with 8 million members, that member group is broken up into two different types of members. You get something called active members, and you get something called passive members. Now, what might surprise you is that 20% of this group, especially if we think about 8 million in South Africa, are only active members, which means they're searching, they're engaged, they're looking for opportunities, they're thinking about first progressing their career, building networks, moving and advancing. If we pivot to the other side, which largely make up the most of the member count with 18%, we see that this passive group does not search. They need to be attracted and they're open to being engaged. But that really dictates a different type of strategy and moves us away from recruitment marketing, just needing to put a job advert out there to build a talent pool, so to speak, or to fill a vacancy. We need to move towards a passive strategy, understanding that most of the talent we're engaging with, especially when we think about digital, tech, and scarce skills, sits in this passive group. So really, that means the way that we use the platform is very different when we think about a content strategy and we think about employer branding. So on the next slide, what might surprise you is that the top reasons people engage with content on LinkedIn are not necessarily to find a job or to be sold to. They're really engaging on the platform because the content is educational or informative. It's relevant to me. It's to stay on top of latest trends. It's because it's inspiring, and it's to ultimately help improve skills development. So if we use these, I suppose, as largely or widely content pillars at the top of our funnel, that really moves us and ultimately illustrates the shift that we see from recruitment marketing to employer branding. We can no longer talk about potentially the coffee at our businesses. We can't talk about the culture. But what we can talk about is educational, informative information about our businesses. We can hyper-personalize the content we create for our candidate pools from the data that we get about this audience and what they're looking for from their role, from an EVP, and from a business. It's to stay on top of latest trends. So how do we actually use the trends that our businesses are pioneering to attract talent at that level? It's because it's inspiring. I mean, who wouldn't want to work for a business, right, that isn't inspiring in some way, shape, or form? And ultimately to improve skills development. So using, right, these pillars, we can articulate a really compelling EVP to take into the market and ensure that talent is engaging with our content. That then takes us on to building your employer branding strategy, which we really underpin by three main themes or stages. It's firstly to articulate your strategy using data and the opportunities we have at our fingertips with digital. It's then to activate it, to have it live and embodied by people, by an experience in a candidate journey. And then lastly, it's about amplifying that brand in accordance to the people and talent pools that we need to meet in the market. So that's why when you're choosing a channel, it's really important to understand from a data perspective how your candidates are engaging with it. Over to you, Jen.
Thank you, Sam. As Sam mentioned, the first step is really articulating your strategy. And I don't know about you, but when I'm making decisions these days, I almost always use data to inform those decisions. When I used to go to work in the morning, I used to check a digital map to understand what the traffic was like. Before I go to a restaurant, I always check that the restaurant's Google review rating is good. In my job, I use multiple different data sets every day and data points to decide how to allocate my time, who to talk to, when to engage with them. And these are all very, very minor daily decisions. And yet I am still on an ongoing basis in almost every decision I make, incorporating data into those decisions somehow. So in designing something as important as your talent strategy, which is one of the most important pillars determining your company's success, it is, of course, imperative to take a data-driven approach to ensure that your strategy is timely and relevant and resonates with your key target groups. When defining who your target groups are, understanding what they want, and figuring out when and how to engage them, how can we ensure that we're making the right decisions if we're not using data to guide those decisions? It's a little bit like not using data to plan for a journey. So imagine you were driving from Johannesburg to Maputo and you ended up going via Cape Town. You may get there in the end, but it's a very, very long route to take, and you may not ever actually arrive there. It's timely, it's time consuming, it's costly, and you may never find yourself there. And that's why it's so important that we start building data into our day-to-day workflow in terms of developing our talent strategies. This is what can really give you a competitive edge over your competitors, and also just making sure that what you're doing is really resonating with your target groups and is getting in front of your target groups at the right time with the right messaging in front of the right target groups. The next step is to actually then activate that strategy. So once we've built this amazing data-driven strategy, we need to actually move towards activating 2 particular target groups. And when we start thinking about activations, we need to take candidates through a journey where they're first of all made aware of an organization. No one is ever going to apply at a job, well, they're never going to go and look for a job at a company they don't know anything about or have never heard about. So we first of all need to make them aware of your company as an employer. And then we really need to get them to start engaging with your organization as an employer, starting to learn more about what you offer as an organization, like Sam mentioned. What's your culture like? What are your values? What are your leaders? What kind of positioning do you have in particular points in the market? And we can really bring that to life by using storytelling. We can bring that to life by telling the stories of our employees, of our leadership. They're really, really imperative for positioning your organization. And this is all brought together through incredibly human-centric storytelling. And then the final part of an employer branding strategy is, of course, to amplify those messages to the people that matter the most. Recently, a company that I follow on LinkedIn was repeatedly putting content in front of me aimed at young data scientists. And as much as I wish that I was, in fact, a young data scientist myself, the fact is that I'm not, unfortunately. And the first time that I saw that content, I ignored it. The second time that I saw that content, I felt a mild frustration, like this isn't relevant to me. Why is this content being boosted to me and put in front of me? And the third time that this irrelevant content was put in front of me, I actually went and followed the company. I have a very curated LinkedIn feed that really speaks to my interests, to my passions, and the content that was being put in front of me was really, really not relevant. And I simply went and unfollowed that company. That company lost a follower that day because they weren't putting the right content in front of me at the right time. Conversely, I had a similar experience, but the other side of the coin, where another company put an advert for a mini online MBA in front of me at a time when I was researching further educational courses for myself. The first ad I saw was eye-catching. It really kind of caught my attention. The second ad that I saw was a person who completed the course, speaking about what the course had, how it had impacted their lives and what difference it had made to them. And then finally, there was an invitation to a short webinar about the course to learn more. I attended the webinar, and then I actually registered for the course, paid for the course, and did the course. And I think these 2 different experiences really highlight the importance of putting the right messaging in front of the right target groups at the right time. It's an absolutely imperative part of the process. And this also needs to be done in a smart way. As we've shown, candidates travel a very, very long journey before making something as significant as a career decision. We cannot simply put an opportunity in front of them and expect them to apply for it and be interested. If you remember earlier, I mentioned that candidates require no less than 34 touch points on average before making a career decision, and that's only on LinkedIn. And that decision-making process takes over 8 months. So we need to use all the tools in our toolbox to be present during these touch points. We need to put articles and thought leadership in front of candidates. We need to invite them to webinars and events. We need our own employees to be telling the story of our companies. And we also need our leadership to be telling the stories of our companies. And we need to do all of this at scale in a super targeted way. Simple, right?
Simple in a nutshell. But that being said, I suppose, even from a performance marketing point of view, just to echo Jenny's sentiment, we see all the time, right, managing campaigns for enterprise and SMB organizations, that really the content that does extremely well is the human-centric content. It's the real content that really tells your employer branding story. It's not necessarily a logo and a swish and a quote all the time. It's really going further into that. So really think about it as you are a brand of purpose, much like your consumer marketing teams would be advocating for that brand and getting it to live, right, in a consumer journey. We are only replicating this for a candidate and really making them aware of our promise to them by joining our organization and what that lived promise is. So really, to summarize, I suppose, your checklist, if you think about employer branding success, data first is where it starts. Create your strategy with facts. We must always empower ourselves with data before creating our go-to-market message and execution. This, in fact, improves time to hire, cost to hire, and reduces wasted time. It needs to be meaningful. Authenticity is absolutely key. If it's not real, don't market it. Attraction and retention are actually very closely linked, and many HR professionals on this LinkedIn Live might agree with that. We cannot be selling the snow white red apple when really the candidate bites into it. When they become an employee, it turns, right, to that sour apple, because that's really going to prove a negative job to our recruitment strategy and ultimately our retention. It needs to be true and lived. Ensure this resonates both internally and externally. I've seen businesses make mistakes where they take a brand and a message to market, and the internal employees are not feeling that and living it. And it actually creates a negative effect on your strategy and on your skills attraction. So really, your employees and your leadership are your best brand ambassadors. Use them. They're the best way to show, or rather illustrate, that true and lived experience. So in closing today, we'd just love to leave you with a quote by Richard Branson that really underpins creating a brand of purpose and why it's so important. The brands that will thrive in the coming years are the ones that have a purpose beyond profit. So thank you very much for listening to our keynote. I know that we're a minute over, so the rest of the panel are probably dying to get onto the virtual stage. So I'm now going to hand over to Ayanda, who's going to take us, or introduce us rather, to Nixon and our panel.
Sam and Jen, that was really insightful. Thank you for letting us in on the real power of using LinkedIn's member data to help find the best and right candidates and talent for the businesses. And also really telling, a good story is very important in what I picked up from that session. Next up, we have Nixon Sawe, who's the account director at LinkedIn. Nixon will be leading our panel today with our most valued customers at DigiOutsource, and Old Mutual. Nixon, over to you.
Hi, Ayanda. Thank you so much for that. And hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today. I hope you're enjoying the discussion so far. As Ayanda mentioned, Nixon is my name. I'm an account director here at LinkedIn, and I'll be moderating today's panel. We have quite a few exciting guests joining us today. So as Ayanda would have mentioned, we have Michelle Marden from DigiOutsource joining us. We have Junian Makotha from Old Mutual joining us. And all the way from Amsterdam, we also have Robin Lighton joining us from OfferZen as well. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump straight in. So we have quite a few varying analysts today from different industries. So some of the attendees today are from tech industry, insurance, and financial services. But I think one thing you all have in common is, to some levels, you've mastered the art of candidate attraction and employer branding. So I'm going to ask you a few questions and put you on the spot a little bit to kind of delve in and get an understanding of how you have reached to the point that you're currently in. So Michelle, if it's okay, I'm going to pick on you first and ask you the first question. So as I mentioned, Michelle is joining us from DigiOutsource in Cape Town. So the first question for you, Michelle, is that the phrase is that content is king. This is a phrase that we hear quite often, that content is king. So given that DigiOutsource as a business is based mostly on tech and digital skills, and correct me if that's wrong, but how has content played a role in your strategy? And what kind of impact does that have as part of your strategy?
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning, and it's so awesome to be here. Thanks for the good question. So in terms of content, it's important for me to mention that for DigiOutsource, authenticity is really important to us in the content that we produce. We feel like, content that is overproduced can sometimes be perceived as insincere. So authentic content is really important. If anybody listening has viewed our content on our page, it's not hard to see that as a brand, we try really hard to weave our incredible culture and our people into each post. We don't like using Shutterstock images, and we don't like hiring models to pose as our employees. Our people are our best brand ambassadors. You also won't see things like job adverts in terms of content on our corporate page. It's not what our corporate page is for. People want to see content that offers value and insight into the company that they are eyeing out as a potential employer. We want to truly connect with our online community and to get buy-in from them while staying true to who Digi is. This type of content plays a key role in attracting the kind of talent that we are looking for. Having worked previously for 6 years at Derovco building their brand, another big name in the online gaming and tech industry, it's where I learned that being real about who you are as a brand goes a really long way in connecting with your audience and building that trust that you need so that you can help bring them down the funnel. In addition to sharing content on the corporate Digi page, I work very closely with our recruitment team and our Digi people. They're our best online brand champions, sharing our content organically and priming talent to click on that advert that we do eventually post using Campaign Manager.
Thank you for that, Michelle. So to summarize, you've mentioned that authenticity is key to the content strategy and giving people a real insight of what it's like to actually be from Digi Outsource and not necessarily stock imagery, but really authentic insights into the organization. You mentioned something particularly interesting there in how you collaborate with talent acquisition as well. So my follow-up question here is in relation to the tricky balance between awareness and conversion as part of that marketing funnel. So I'd love for you to kind of share with us how you think about that intricate balance of obviously doing marketing top of funnel to generate awareness, but at the same time, you also collaborate with other stakeholders who maybe are more interested in the conversion element in terms of how do we actually bring people into the organization and convert them as potentially employees or whatever the metric might be in that specific campaign. So how do you think about that balance between awareness and conversion?
Yes, speaking of awareness versus conversion, as you say, different stakeholders within the company, and you obviously get the talent acquisition team coming to me last minute saying, code black, we need 6 of these right now. That happens often. So I don't want to be reactive. And so we try and maintain an always on approach, to keep brand awareness always on, so that when we put out those adverts, people are going to click on them. It's really unrealistic to, I don't know, for argument's sake, you need 5 full stack developers and you're just going to post that ad out there. And it's almost like a pray and spray. You're just hoping that somebody clicks on it. But in order to achieve this really awesome balance that I've got and working closely with the talent acquisition team, they give me guidance as to the niche talent pools, how hard they are to get tracked. So keeping brand awareness campaigns on with them is really important to us. I also work closely with them to understand the different annual talent flows throughout the year and how those work, and our strategy according to those. And working with the hiring managers is also really important in creating the content as well. So I need them to also get a better understanding of the amount of work that goes into the conversion. So it's quite a beautiful dance that we do together, leveraging the organic content, then the paid, and obviously to convert. It's just an always on approach is honestly the most effective that I have found so far.
Thank you for sharing that, Michelle. Always on. I like the sound of that. And so I'm going to switch gears slightly, but just following on from your answer and bring Junian into the discussion as well. So as we would have mentioned at the start, Junian joins us from Old Mutual in the talent acquisition team. And I think it's probably important to take a slight step back and ask Junian, why is having an EVP important at all? I mean, we've heard some of the points from Sam and Jen Lee earlier in the discussion in terms of, how soon in advance you have to start engaging with your target audience in order for you to get that conversion that Michelle has also been speaking about just now. But I think from your point of view as somebody in talent acquisition from a big brand in South Africa, why is having an EVP important?
Wow, thank you so much. In terms of the EVP, it actually talks to why is it important for a top performer in another company to come join an organization? What is our unique selling points? So if you are unable to actually articulate what those unique selling points are, then it's going to be difficult for us to attract talent, even to retain the talent, because you're looking at an EVP to say, what is it that me as an employee I will contribute, and what is it that as an employee I will get in return? So if you are unable to articulate all that, then how are we going to attract top talent from competitors? Because that's what we do. We always taking talent from different competitors. So our unique selling points are key, and they need to be very, very clearly defined, because it actually says why this is the reason why I should join this organization.
And just to follow up on that, Junian, I should probably take a slight step back and just for our audience as well, and explain that by EVP, we're specifically referring to the employer value proposition of your organization, right? So given what you've just said in terms of the impact of having an EVP in terms of attracting new candidates to the organization, but also its impact on retention as well, it sounds like a quite instrumental part of your talent acquisition strategy. So my follow-up question would be, is how do you position Old Mutual in a slightly different way? In the sense, how do you customize your EVP strategy to make sure that you're really telling the Old Mutual story? Anything that you can share with us from that process?
I mean, for a large organization such as Old Mutual, it is difficult, but when we engaged with LinkedIn or Social Craft, especially Sam, we went into the process of creating personas. And for me, the personas are saying, what is it that our own people are experiencing at Old Mutual? And thereafter, you saying, what are the cultural benefits of being at Old Mutual for that particular skill category? What are some of the exciting things that people are experiencing? And what I found with the whole persona development is that you're actually getting the insights and data from your own people. Because my belief is that you can't have an EVP that is generic, because especially for large organizations, you can't say one size fits all, because different units have different cultures, they've got different leaderships, they've got different ways of doing things. So if you go into the conversations about a particular skill set and you say, what is it that is making you actually stay here? What is exciting? What are they, how are you going to be progressing? The conversations are quite in depth, and they were facilitated by Sam Coom, I must say, Social Craft and LinkedIn. So I think that then gives an authentic and sincere message to whoever wants to come and join that particular unit, to say, this is what I'm going to experience. It's not wishy-washy. So that is what we're looking for. For me, that's an EVP from the people themselves. They can tell what is working, not working, and what is it that you can look forward to. And people can decide to say, this is how I'm going to progress, or am I going to join, not join? But the most important thing about the personas is that it informs your brand messaging. Because I'm always of the belief that most companies do cold dishes as well. So we need to find a way to tell the authentic story, but your creative concept and your brand messages gets informed by data. And that data, it comes from our own employees per category of skill.
Thank you for that, Junian. And I think just before we transition over to Robin, I have a surprise question to throw into the mix as well for both Junian and Michelle. You mentioned something particularly interesting there, Junian, where it's essentially a balance between, first of all, understanding the personas that you're looking to speak to and what they care about, and then authentically customizing that message to them. So the surprise question that I have for both of you is, how do you get that buy-in from maybe your colleagues that are not necessarily in talent acquisition or maybe not necessarily in marketing, but of course they have a key role to play in communicating the brand message, the DGL story, the Old Mutual story to other individuals in their networks? Any tips, tricks, commentary, advice, anything you can share with us in terms of how can we get a little bit of buy-in from our colleagues that are a little bit outside of our core functions that of course would help us a lot in amplifying the story, telling the authentic story, which of course does drive an impact when it comes to talent acquisition, marketing, and some of the other things that we care about. I am putting you on the spot, but please, if any one of you would like to go first, please go ahead.
I'm fine to go first. So it's all about collaboration. And we work closely with our marketing and digital and data team. We work closely with the different business units. And one of the biggest things that we did earlier this year was to identify with the talent acquisition teams to say, what are your scarce skills? Do you want them today? Do you want them tomorrow or in the future, or capabilities of the future? And then we after to have to engage with Jenny and the team to say, fine, we need to move away from reactive. Because the moment you do we are hiring, it means you're desperate. You're gonna get desperate people. And desperate people are not always top performers. So we had a planning session beginning of the year to say, this is what the skill set we're gonna get. What is the always on? And most talent acquisition teams don't even understand always on. So it's education, which LinkedIn provides for us all the time. And to say, this is what you need to understand by always on, this is what we understand by dark post, above the line, below the line. So talent acquisition is talent market. It's like marketing. You are in marketing, as the previous speakers have said. So you have to take your stakeholders with you. Some will get it and move, and some will be slow to comprehend what you're trying to achieve. But it's a journey.
Thank you for that, Junian. Michelle, anything from your side before we quickly move over to Robin as well?
Yeah, just quickly from my side, I have to be very honest. We've had such incredible success with LinkedIn that actually bringing people over from the other side, if they're not in marketing, so hiring managers, etc., to get them to spend time with me, let me interview them so I can create this niche content for the brand personas hasn't been very difficult because of the amazing success that we have had with LinkedIn. I'm trying to think perhaps before that success we had, I think we were kind of willing to try anything. So getting people across to sell the story. I think also giving somebody a platform to talk about how fantastic their team is and what the company does and the goals that we're trying to reach, giving somebody a platform to voice that to a community of like-minded people, as you would on LinkedIn with the dark posts, etc., that gets their buy-in, I think. People like to speak about what they're passionate about.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Michelle. Junian. Robin, over to you.
Hi, Nixon.
How are you doing? So switching gears quickly to OfferZen and the role that OfferZen has played in that talent acquisition landscape. So the first question, it's an easy one to get the ball rolling. Why do you think OfferZen has been so successful in recruiting top talent?
Great question. So OfferZen's success in recruiting top tech talent really lies in how we approach the recruitment process. Recruiting top talent is exceptionally hard. I think everybody on the call is very well aware of that. You're trying to get the best people on board, but so is everybody else. And that's why OfferZen does things differently. We shift the traditional recruitment model, ensuring that developers' needs are the core of our focus. Instead of developers applying for multiple roles at companies, companies reach out to developers on our platform with upfront tech stack, role, salary, and perk information. This allows the developers to choose opportunities that actually resonate with them from the start. Our goal has always been to empower our tech talent, and by putting our talent at the core of our model, we're empowering developers to make the best career moves and choices with companies, and also at the same time ensuring that the companies have access to highly skilled and highly engaged tech talent.
Following on from that, Robin, I picked out a few keywords in your answer that I think are somewhat connected to what Michelle and Junian were referring to in their answers as well, which is the whole area of essentially building communities through your content strategy and your brand strategy, whether it's on LinkedIn or otherwise. So could you talk a little bit about why you think building a community is so important to the conversation today?
Of course. So OfferZen isn't just actually about connecting developers to exciting job opportunities, but it's actually very much focused on empowering them to thrive. So that's why we are so invested in growing a community that actually helps each other level up in their career. Through our community, we're actually giving developers a lot of really valuable tools to help them level up in their own careers. So what that means is access to awesome content that is written by devs for devs, distributing tech reports with valuable career insights and the latest tech trends, hosting events, running podcasts with industry experts, and also giving them the option to really be involved in some additional opportunities like our mentorship program.
And I suppose moving into the details slightly and getting an understanding of exactly what solutions may be a part of your strategy, could you share some details of how exactly maybe you think about the solutions that you use and which ones are key to the results that you've been speaking about up to now?
Definitely. So there are obviously many different solutions that are key to our strategy, from how we curate our platform, how we approach our marketplace dynamics, and especially how we execute on our marketing and branding. What we realize at OfferZen is that only a small portion of developers are actively searching for a new job. So it's really essential that we engage and offer something useful to the larger dev community, not just those on the tech market or the job market. When we look at our strategies, we always come back to the same question, which is how can we help developers unlock their potential? And I think that question really is an integral part of our marketing and execution strategy.
Thank you for that, Robin, Michelle, Junian. Thank you for the insights and the input into today's conversation. So that pretty much wraps up the panel discussion today. Next, I would like to hand over to John, who should be joining us shortly, summarize and close today's session. And from there, we should be able to conclude today's webinar. John, I don't know if you can. Oh, Marius, I see you that you have joined. I'm handing it over to you.
Nixon, the role of John will be played by me today. So thank you everybody for attending the session. For our speakers, Jenny and Sam Coombe from LinkedIn and the Social Craft, Nixon, Michelle, Robin, and Junian, you guys have been fantastic. The conversation has been amazing. I'm seeing really good comments here from some of our attendees. So thank you very much. The insights and the conversation has been great. It's really powerful to see how employer branding has grown as a discipline across, interestingly enough, across HR and marketing as something that needs to thrive and be brought forward more and more. Jane and Sam, thank you for giving us the building blocks to start this conversation and to start the process within businesses. And then our panelists for those incredible insights. It's always amazing to see how the theory meets the practice and how these very divergent businesses apply this process in each of their processes. So to all of our attendees, thank you. We are going to make the presentation as well as a recording of our sessions. We will make that available afterwards. Have an amazing Friday and an amazing weekend. And we look forward to seeing you at our next Insider Voice session, where we're going to be working with the LinkedIn B2B Institute, as well as with the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, to talk about some of the trends that are affecting marketers today. So thank you very much and have an amazing, amazing weekend.